Thank you very much, Chief Secretary London.
Somebody must go.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Call name. Call name. Somebody
I want to say to you again how pleased I am of my people of Trinidad and Tobago. When this matter came to the public attention and we sought to respond, among the things I did as opposition leader, acting on your behalf, in the face of this shame and this stain on our country, where those who have enough money and enough influence could get a prime minister and a cabinet to come to the parliament and under the guise of passing a particular law, insert certain things, give certain assurance to the parliament to get the support of opposition members and independent senators, and having got that support, you are giving an assurance that you will not do certain things and that you must do certain things, and you come out of the parliament and in the dead of night, in the middle of our 50th anniversary of independence, good God, a few days before the 100th anniversary ends of Eric Williams' birth, so I immediately, understanding that this is the communication age, in a matter of seconds, around the world, from Australia to Timbuktu, from New Zealand to Scotland, the people know that in Trinidad and Tobago, there exists a government that betrayed the parliament, that used the cabinet to allow alleged criminals, innocent or guilty, to not have a day in court. Oh, what a country. So I wrote to all the interested parties where Trinidad and Tobago's interest is affected. I wrote to the government of the United States, our major trading partner and our major partner in defense of this country. I wrote to the United Kingdom, another partner in defense of this country. I wrote to the government of Canada, another partner. I wrote to the government of France, who by having French territories in the region is a partner in our security. I wrote to the government of the Kingdom of Holland, that has territories in this region and whose warships secure our state. And I wrote to the United Nations, where our proud legacy is in danger. I wrote to the OAS, of we are an early member. I wrote to the ACS, and I wrote to the CARICOM, where we are brothers and sisters alike, to tell them one thing and one thing only, and that is that the office holders, the Prime Minister, the cabal, the cabinet, they speak only for themselves in this criminal matter. And that my letters separate the people of Trinidad and Tobago from this criminal act of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. I write them to let them know that even though the government has done that to the people will have none of it, and today you have shown that by your thousands. It was Winston Churchill who said in Britain's darkest day in World War II, this is not the beginning of the end. It is the end of the beginning of our action, but it is the beginning of the end of the Kamla Prasad regime. When former President Robinson spoke about morality and absence of moral and spiritual values, some persons are highly offended. But power being exercised without moral and spiritual values is tyranny. And you've seen it here. That is why, after an emergency session in Parliament, in the lower house and in the upper house, and the debate was concluded in both houses, not a member of the cabinet, even today, could say, why did you do that? It is not that they don't know the answer. It is not that they don't have the answer. but the answer is too horrible to tell you. And your presence here today, in 48 hours, there were thousands of persons saying to this government, we will have none of it. We will have none of it. On this platform today are persons of different political views, maybe of different religious persuasions. But I tell you one thing that binds us together, especially in this hour of crisis, we are standing up for Trinidad and Tobago. And if Trinidad and Tobago ever needed us, all of us, it is now. There is more that binds me to Brother Abdullah and to Brother Kirk Megu than separate me. Because the red, white and black bind us together. That is what we defend. A very curious thing happened today. I pointed out to the country that we had an emergency session of Parliament in the face of this outrage. And the head of the government, the head of the cabinet that authorized it, came to the Parliament in that debate and didn't have a word to say. All she did was to try to get Arnold Roberts to speak for her. And to get Jack Warner to speak for her. But Arnold Roberts, God help us, is not the Prime Minister. Nor is Alexander Logan. Nor is Jack Warner. The Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, we know her name. She has authority. I want to ask you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, if a crisis like this had arisen in New Zealand, in India, in Australia, in Canada, you think the Prime Minister could have gone to the Parliament and have not a word to say? Have you ever seen the British Prime Minister at question time at Westminster? And then we are governed by a coalition party. So the leader of the coalition has nothing to say. And the second-tier leader of the COP, he too had nothing to say. But while they have nothing to say, their minions and their spin doctors are calling for my resignation. I want to tell them something. The record will show in this country that I am not about office. I can walk away from office if I have to. But when my country needs me and I have nothing to apologize for, I will be here. And let me say something to all those who think that I am the problem. You know, the problem is not a cabinet that deceived the Parliament. The problem is not a Prime Minister who used the cabinet to cause persons not to appear in court. The problem is not an Attorney General whose record is as long and as grey as you could think. The problem is that the opposition voted for it. And therefore we are to blame equally. Let's start with this. We voted for it on one ground and one ground only. That the assurances given to Parliament would be met. And if you have to apologize for one thing, we'll do it now. Apologize for taking them at the lying word in the Parliament. Could you imagine an editorial in The Guardian is saying that I should be chastised because I should have known I shouldn't trust the government. What the hell is this? The editorial in The Guardian is saying that the opposition leader should know that the government is not trustworthy and don't trust them. Well, I agree that they're not trustworthy. But having now accepted in trying to defend themselves from this fiasco, having accepted that they cannot be trusted, they must get out of office at the earliest opportunity. They must get out of office. So the leader of the COP sat there and had nothing to say. We pointed out that notwithstanding what the Parliament does, when we found out what they did, we came to the Parliament to try to fix it. One of the things we said from early is that notwithstanding whatever option the Parliament uses, it will be challenged in the court. Because you gave them that right, and to attempt to take it away, they can now go and argue in the court that the parliament is acting improperly. The Attorney General went out of his way to put words on Hansard that can be used by defense lawyers to say, you see what the government did? They are acting against the interests of particular citizens, and that isn't allowable. And then, you know, press conference this morning, and Prakash Amada is apologizing. Hear what he's apologizing for? Hear what he's apologizing for? For clause 34. Because to add insult to the injury, it is not only that the government betrayed Parliament's trust. Now that they were caught and they are exposed to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, their way out is to say, blame all of we in the Parliament, we can live with that. We can take that. Well, I am not taking that. It was not what was passed in the Parliament. Whatever you think of the content of clause 34, that was not the problem. The problem we are facing is the cabinet proclaiming clause 34 early so that the friends could benefit. And let me explain to you why. When we sought the undertaking that nothing will be proclaimed under 3 or 4 years, it is because we understood that if there were matters of the nature which is concerning us now, in 3 or 4 years they would have been long gone. Poor matter in which these friends of the government involved, one has been completed and is awaiting indictment. The other one was nearing completion and was due to come up in the court in a matter of days. And that is why the government went secretly, surreptitiously, and damagingly in the dead of night. When you were looking at independence celebration, they proclaimed the amnesty clause. And the reason for that was to allow persons who were about to have their preliminary inquiry completed, and the DPP had already indicated publicly that once the two were finished, because they were the same matter tied together, he will indict and try the two as one. And that matter of the action of the cabinet was to prevent them from continuing with the preliminary inquiry, and it has worked brilliantly. Because as soon as the government did what they did, as they were drinking their champagne, the lawyers were drafting up documents, and then they went to court and they said we can't continue with this preliminary inquiry because the government has let us go under clause 34. So from here on in, we are trying to undo what was done on the 31st of August. Before the 31st of August, this problem didn't exist. And that is why the US government never complained when the law was passed. Every law passed in our parliament is scrutinized by every embassy in this country and reported back home. But there was no problem because the Attorney General gave the US government and our people the assurance that the government would move to take all steps necessary to have a speedy trial of these persons. Nobody was expecting that while you were saying that on one mouth, out of the other mouth, you were talking to your friends and telling them you're almost free. Understand? And against all of this, I heard somebody writing some foolishness in the parliament, in the papers, and being repeated to you, the people, that it must have been some conspiracy between the PNM and the UNC to have PNM criminals go and UNC criminals go. Even if that nonsense had any basis, what then about the vote of the independents who voted all nine for the original bill? Are we to understand that the independents was involved in a conspiracy to level PNM people? Just give me a break. I might look stupid, but I'm not stupid. You're not stupid. You understand? And that's what they're pushing at you. So now all of a sudden, they're pushing you with a propaganda that the issue is about Parliament. Parliament was betrayed. And any country where the Parliament has been betrayed, and let me go further.
You must go.
Members of this cabinet have been telling people quietly on the side that they didn't know about this. We know that as lie, right? But suppose that is true. Just suppose that is true. Does it sound too far-fetched to be true? Where are you from? This is a country with a prime minister who hired and placed in office a telephone operator as the head of the security service in the country. And when the scandal broke and I raised it, she didn't back away immediately, you know. She said, I'm against Rashmi because Rashmi is Indian.
Exactly.
And because the woman, and because she's young. So I was against Indian, I was against woman, me, and that she was young. It was public pressure that caused Rashmi's appointment to be revoked in 1 week. But the record of this country cannot be erased. That for 1 week, Rashmi Ramnarayan was the head of the country's security services appointed by Kamala Prasad Bisesa. And if that could happen in this country, ask yourself, why it couldn't be true, as some ministers are saying, that the full cabinet didn't know about this. And let me explain to you the import of that statement. If it is that the cabinet cannot stand all of them and say, I knew about this, I was a part of this.
Excuse me.
And it was done by a small cabal.
Just shift a little bit, that's okay.
Then this means that the authority of the cabinet would have been improperly used by persons to advise the president to bring into law, against a commitment to the parliament, a clause of an act which caused this problem. And if that actually happened as we are checking out, it would have meant that a coup, a palace coup, would have taken place in the government. Today, in my conversations with His Excellency the President, I asked him to do two things. Since the President signs his proclamation, and the President, as we understand it in our country, is not a rubber stamp and a figurehead, and is responsible to receive reports from the Prime Minister on the state of the nation, and that this issue has come out as obscenely and absurdly as it has, I have asked the President to trace the document backwards to its origin, the document that asked him to sign the proclamation, and make sure that at every stage in the proceedings, right down to the drafter of the cabinet note, that the country's rules, regulations, and laws were followed. And I asked the President, don't speak to me secretly on that. Talk to the country on what you have found when you've done that. And I asked the President, in also requiring to get information from the Prime Minister on the behavior of the government and the state of the nation, that he asked the Prime Minister to give him in writing an explanation as to why the cabinet did what the cabinet did on the 28th of August. And I told the President, we will give you some time. Not too much time. We don't have too much time. But we'll give you some time to pursue those lines. And we expect that the President will talk to the nation on these matters. Trinidad and Tobago is in crisis. It might very well be that there are criminals inside of the government who have no compunction whatsoever in using governmental authority to further criminal conduct. And if that is what is happening, the people must know. You must know. And if that's what is happening, we are not naked, we're not defenseless. Understand? So today, after 48 hours, up comes Prakash Amida this morning, sanctimoniously, piously, foolishly, coming to apologize. And here what you apologizing for? That an error was made, and he is the chairman of the Legislative Review Committee, which is where the changes should originate, and clause 34 never came there. But when Volney got up in the parliament and said that all the stakeholders have been consulted. Prakash, who is chairman of the LRC, is now telling us for the first time since November last year that the LRC was not consulted on Clause 34. So we took Volney at his word that all the stakeholders had been consulted. Prakash told us this morning that Volney lied to the parliament, because he confirmed this morning that Clause 34 never came before the LRC. And then he goes on to say, as if you're stupid, it's an error. It is not an error. It is a deliberate conspiracy involving persons in the government. And I want to ask Prakash this. I'm a geologist. I'm a geochemist. I never went to law school. I sleep with a lawyer and I raised a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. Prakash is a senior lawyer. He knows that this matter is going to the Privy Council. And when it gets there, the state's lawyers will argue that this matter is so important in the public interest that private concerns of the affected parties must be overridden. But the court will only listen to that. The court will only listen to that argument if it can be shown that it happened as a result of something unusual, an error or mistake, or even a rogue officer who... What happens when you get before the law? The law will ask for the Hansard to see what was said in Parliament. If Prakash knew it never came before the LRC and it was an error, why didn't he say so in the Parliament and put that on Hansard so the state could use that as a defense when you go to the court? He's a lawyer. He knows the value. He knows the value of that statement on Hansard because he's a leader of a part of the coalition. And if he had spoken that in the Parliament, our lawyers for the state could have argued that at least he is a leader of the coalition, the chairman of the LRC, saying to the parliament that something happened here which was an error. And clearly it never came to LRC, and the public interest would ask the court to overturn it in protection of the majority as against giving the minority freedom. He never said a word. Today is 3 weeks. Today is 3 weeks since the cabinet did what they did. It's the first time we're hearing from Prakash. Parliamentary debate, silence. Eating of food, the power of the people. And I want to end on one note. Injustice Volney told the media, don't bother with them. This is a 10-day wonder. I want to invite Volney to start a count. Today is day 1. And this is the smoke, the fire behind. Because in 48 hours, I led, you led, to a call that said to the people, in 48 hours, let's get marching. And you saw it today. I didn't have the opportunity then to consult with my colleagues elsewhere in other leadership roles. And I have the time now, and we will consult and we will return. And when we return, we're returning in numbers too much for them to count. This is not the beginning of the end, it's the end of the beginning. So today, I want to thank you all for sending a message loud and clear to reach the helicopter in the air. Don't trifle with the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I want to tell the world that yes, in Trinidad and Tobago, there's a government in office facilitating criminal conduct, but the people are on the move to protect the people and the children. Thank you and good day.